Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for holding this hearing today. I want to thank and welcome Secretary Foxx back to the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss with you the administration's surface transportation proposal as well as other matters. I don't think it's there probably isn't anything that's more important in terms of our competitiveness as a nation than maintaining and improving our nation's infrastructure. And states like South Dakota, where I come from, rely on a top-quality transportation network to connect the vast distances between our communities and to help deliver critical agricultural products and natural resources via truck and freight rail to markets across the country and around the globe. Also important is the safety mission of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which not only conducts vehicle safety research but also administers various grants to keep motorists safe. While we're approaching the expiration of the most recent Surface Transportation Bill, or MAP 21, that was signed into law just less than 2 years ago, like the Chairman, I'm looking forward to working with any of our colleagues on both the Commerce Committee and also on the Finance Committee to ensure that we continue to have a robust surface transportation program. I'm glad the administration has released its first ever Surface Transportation Reauthorization proposal this last week, especially in light of the anticipated shortfalls that are facing the Highway Trust Fund. As many in this room know, the Highway Trust Fund is projected to become insolvent later this summer. This shortfall, which is already being felt, will lead to delays in highway and safety improvements and reimbursements to states and to the construction sector. This is particularly problematic for cold weather states such as South Dakota that have a shorter construction season and a limited window to make decisions regarding which projects to select, bid, and ultimately begin construction. As Congress works to reauthorize our nation's highway programs, the most important question we must answer is how we will pay for the program going forward. Since serving on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee during T21, to our efforts with Safety Lou, and most recently with MAP 21, I'm skeptical about the financing proposals the administration's put forward to fund its $302 billion plan, especially the administration's reliance upon one-time revenues from so-called corporate tax reform. This aspect of the plan is unlikely to secure broad support in Congress and fails to provide a longer-term funding solution for these vital programs. I'm also concerned by the administration's proposal to fund additional programs, including new programs on passenger rail and vehicle safety, and an expansion of TIGER through the successor to the Highway Trust Fund. In a time of limited revenue, it would seem to me unwise to make new promises regarding programs that have the potential to divert funding from the core mission of the Highway Trust Fund. Nevertheless, there are some provisions I'm encouraged by, including the fact that the administration has recognized my call for extending the deadline for positive train control implementation. As we've discussed previously in this committee, delays at the Federal Communications Commission and other unforeseen events since enactment of the PTC mandate in 2008 have prevented nearly all passenger and freight railroads from moving forward on implementation of this technology. Along with Senators Blunt, McCaskill, and Pryor, I've introduced legislation which is supported by other members of this committee to extend the 2015 deadline in order to provide all railroads with a realistic time frame for full implementation. There are now 14 bipartisan co-sponsors of this legislation, and I hope that our committee will address the PTC issue yet this Congress. Unfortunately, however, the administration proposal does not include a straightforward extension of the 2015 deadline, something that I think is necessary, especially given the delays at the FCC. I hope to see such an extension included in any final bill reported out of the committee, and I look forward to working with my colleagues and with the administration on this important issue. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again for holding the hearing and thank Secretary Foxx for being with us and for his testimony, and look forward to discussing with him further what we can do to get a robust highway program up and running that secures not only the near-term needs that we have, but also those that we have down the road well into the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, the administration's proposal would increase funding for transit by 70%, for rail programs by 243%, but would only increase highway funding by 21% compared to current levels. And I'm wondering what the reason is for that discrepancy. We've always thought about the highway bill, the Highway Trust Fund being, principally about highways.
Sure. Senator, if you take a look at our proposal, it's a $302 billion proposal over 4 years. $199 billion of it goes directly into highways. And we suspect that with the advent of additional discretionary competitive programs, that a substantial amount of the additional spending will also go into highways. But there are reasons why we've taken the approach that we've taken. And primarily it is that our country is growing. By 2050, we're expecting 100 million additional people and 14 billion additional tons of freight that we'll have to move around this country. And because of that, we've got to have a multimodal approach. And that our proposal is a recognition of that. So what I would say is that in absolute dollars, the lion's share of this money is still going to go into our highway system, which we obviously have critical repair needs, critical new capacity needs, but it also recognizes that we have growth happening in our metro areas. We also have rural connections through transit and through rail that badly need to happen, whether it's passenger or freight.
Since I've been associated with highway bills, and in time I've been in the House and Senate, we've done 3. This would be 4. It's always been funded by the user fee. And as I think was pointed out earlier, Senator Rockefeller and I and some others also serve on the Finance Committee. We had a meeting at the Finance Committee last year in which a couple of members on our side, some of our more conservative members, expressed support for an increase in the user fee, in the fuel tax. And the administration has, in testimony in front of this committee and others that I've been involved with in the time in the Senate, and your predecessor would come up and say that that's something that the administration would not support. And the reason I raise that question is because the corporate tax reform that's used to fund this proposal is really one-time revenues. It's repatriation of funds. It's not the long-term solution that we're all talking about, and it actually creates a steeper cliff at the conclusion that would have to be filled up with a more permanent source of financing. And so the question I have for you is the administration open to or going to close the door on a user fee, a fuel tax, as a way of more permanently funding the highway program as opposed to something like this, which is very short-term and limited?
Well, I appreciate the question, and our proposal is our proposal. We believe that it strikes the right balance and actually adheres to many of the principles that we've heard articulated from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. That is a desire not to raise rates and a desire to avoid adversely impacting deficits. This proposal, as we've articulated it, would accomplish that, and that is why we've put it together the way we have. At the same time, we've also said that if there are other ideas that emerge from the Hill, we would listen to those ideas, and that's still true. I would point out, however, that the fuel tax has been on the table for quite a while, and even more so if you look at the overall curve in the fuel tax. The curve is downward facing, and that's because of more efficient vehicles and the fact that the tax itself hasn't been indexed. It's a tool that has been available to Congress over the last several years. We will continue to keep our ear to the ground and to listen for other ideas that may emerge.
Well, it is a tool that's been available to Congress, but it's very difficult to feature a bill passed by Congress if the administration has taken a hard stand saying, I'm not going to sign a bill or entertain a financing mechanism that includes a user fee and increase in the gas tax. I mean, that's basically in front of this committee what the position the administration's taken. And so I'm just curious, because at some point we've got to find a long-term solution. And there are some of us who come from rural states where toll roads and vehicle miles traveled solutions just don't work. But I guess the purpose for the question is to find out if the administration, if that's a position they will still adhere strongly to, or if they are open to considering that as a potential way of financing the highway program into the future as it's been financed in the past.
Well, again, we believe our proposal meets a lot of the principles that many have articulated. We think it is the right way to go. Particularly given the urgency of the moment and the fact that we have, even the last heroic effort to get a reauthorization bill done was a 2-year bill. That said, as I said before, our ears and our minds are open to what emerges from the Hill. Make no representations about how the administration will ultimately approach what comes out, but we certainly want to be in the discussion and at the table with you.
You would not rule it out?
We are listening to what Congress says collectively.
That's what your predecessor said, only except that he ruled it
We're
out.
consistent.
Except that he ruled it out. I have one more quick question, Mr. Chairman.
And I'm with you
Okay.
on the way you tried to pin him down there, and he wouldn't answer it.
Okay.
That's called the influence of OMB.
I will.
You're better than that, Mr. Secretary.
I will. I can come back to this later.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, this has to do with what happens if we don't get this thing, and I hope that we do. We need a fix on this, and I hope we can come up with a solution. But what, if any, consideration's been given to ensuring that if we have to fund projects, and you're looking at how to distribute funds, that a large project in one state doesn't affect reimbursement for others in other states, and is the fact that some states have shorter building seasons a factor that's being considered in terms of how you look at that?
In the event that we do reach insolvency, sir?
Right.
Yes. We, in the past, when this issue has been in front of the department, have basically worked with each state to identify what the great challenges are within that state. Invariably, there will be some states that have greater capacity to manage a shortfall than other states, and that will certainly be taken into account based on past history. And our desire and our work will be to hold as few states harmless as we can based on the resources we have. But it will be a tough issue when there's less money and almost no money to meet our obligations.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cantwell.